flags. They're a fun thing, aren't they? We like to stare at them, compare them, rate them, and perhaps even make them. Recently, there's been a new trend in the United States to change its many state flags. This is somewhat unsurprising, seeing as many US state flags have been mocked relentlessly online for their supposed lack of originality. Most flags in the United States follow the same theme: a blue, but sometimes green or buff, background with a state seal stamped onto the flag, and often with the name of the state written on the flag as well. I will be honest, some of these flags are definitely not pretty, but the question is, are they all necessarily bad flags? Or more importantly, is there really a way to scientifically determine the quality of a flag? Many people out there would say yes, or at least claim there are certain baseline rules a flag should follow. One of these people is CGP Grey, a popular edutainment YouTuber. I would first like to say CGP Grey is not a bad channel by any means, and I loved, and still love, to watch his videos. However, in my opinion, his video Grey Grades state flags leans into pretentiousness.
Hey, I wouldn't be laughing, California. It's your turn up here now, and I know you think your flag is awesome, but you seem to have scrawled California across it.
Part of the reason for this is for comedy, of course, but also it's because CGP Grey heavily leans into guidelines by which a flag seemingly must follow. This can leave the viewer with the impression that a flag must follow these guidelines in order to be good, and perhaps that any flag that was not constructed with this mold is lazy or poorly thought out. But these rules do not exist in a vacuum, nor did CGP Grey make them up just for the video. To not mention the origin of these principles can make them seem like they're closer to laws of the universe than ideas some dedicated person came up with. So before we continue, let's discuss the origin of these flag guidelines. Whoops, before we even talk about that, we should talk about Vexillology. Vexillology, in essence, is the scientific study of flags. The term was coined by Whitney Smith in 1957, and later formalized in 1961. In academia, Vexillology is sorta a mix of social sciences, history, and design. The main impact of Vexillology is the organizations it spawns, like the International Congress of Vexillology and the North American Vexillological Association. One of the most notable members of NAVA is Ted K., who is currently the Secretary, Media Relations, and Flag Questions Answerer of the organization. Why is he notable? Well, it's because he wrote this pamphlet, Good Flag, Bad Flag. This pamphlet is the common source for the 5 main flag principles. But what are they? 1. Keep it simple. The idea behind this is that it should be somewhat easy to draw and remember. The example used by K is that a child should be, somewhat able to draw the flag. Number 2. Use meaningful symbolism. The flag should mean something to the people that it represents. This means that each part of the flag should have some sort of meaning behind the colors, stripes, stars, and other aspects. Number 3. Use 2 to 3 basic colors. Pretty self-explanatory, just don't use too many colors on your flag. Number 4. No lettering or seals. Basically, do not put words, text, numbers, coat of arms, or any seal on your flag. I have opinions about this one and specific cases involving it, but I'll save that for later. And finally, number 5. Be distinctive or be related. This one is a bit of a tricky one, but basically your flag should not be identical to some other flag that already exists. But you may want to make your flag similar to other places or organizations that are similar to yours. Alright, you got that all? Great. Okay, so let's apply this to the US state flags and see which flags pass and which flags fail.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Okay, so it appears that the average state actually passes about half of all the guidelines. Oh no, is it over for the US state flags? Well, no, not necessarily, and that is because the flag guidelines are partially bogus. In social sciences, there is a common phrase that appears all of the time that explains something complex in an easily packaged manner.
All models are wrong.
All models are wrong. The idea is kinda simple. Social sciences are about making models that, while not necessarily being reality, can help explain something about our reality in very specific circumstances. This is the goal of a social scientist, and vexillology is no exception. And since a model is created by a human with biases of their own, you are bound to run into issues that plague the results of the model. The 5 principles of flags are merely a model of what Ted K thinks makes a good flag, and not some sort of scientific absolute that everyone must accept. So looking back at this part, I wanted to add a little bit more to clarify what I mean by all models are wrong, and how the model can be affected by K's own biases. While talking about models, yes, you can argue they're all wrong, but that isn't entirely useful. For example, Newton's laws of gravity is a model, and while it is technically an incorrect approximation of how our universe works, it is a pretty damn good model within its scope. This expands the statement from all models are wrong to all models are wrong, but some are useful. The usefulness of a model is determined through either experimentation or statistical analysis, and it is only useful within its scope. Hence, Newton's laws of gravity are good for showing how an object will fall, but not at all good for showing how quantum particles work. Kay's principles for flag design constituting a model does not mean it is false, at least at face value. However, I will be questioning this model throughout the rest of the video since I don't believe in the scientific basis behind the guidelines. And that's partially because Good Flag, Bad Flag is a pamphlet with an agenda, and not a vexillological research paper. Kay doesn't provide evidence for these guidelines correlating to a flag being more popular, and I could not find any supplemental material that would show this. In fact, as I will get into later, there are examples of popular flags that would be designated as bad flags by Kay. Ted Kay is a smart and dedicated man, but his one model should not be the final determination of what makes a flag work. End side tangent. One critic of Kay is Anne Onimu, who wrote a spicy 100-page paper titled, and pardon my French, "The Flag Design Pamphlet Good Flag Bad Flag is Rubbish." While a lot of it is hard to read and borderline hostile, I think one line shines through as worthwhile. Whether a flag is rectangular or otherwise, this is a runoff. Whether a flag is rectangular or otherwise, whether it has a single color, graduated colors, or even millions of colors, whether it has no symbols or dozens of them, whether it includes labels, inscriptions, seals, geographical outlines, or other non-reversible content, whether its features are complex or not, detailed or not, stylized or not, hard to print or not, hard to sew or not, or even if it has an identical design of another flag, if it is well embraced by whom it represents, then it is good. A flag can be more complex, be very hard to draw, have a lot of colors, but if the flag is embraced by the people, then it is good. Judging a flag on its merits is not the point of vexillology. As Smith, the founder of vexillology, wrote in the Principles of Vexillology, the designing and making of flags, the display of flags, promotion of flag usage, collecting of flags, the usage of flags to achieve certain ends, and analysis of relative artistic merits of various flags are not subsumed in the study of flags. Although, the study of any of the above activities is. It's kind of funny. The public perception of vexillology has changed drastically since its inception. Despite how Smith wanted to avoid turning vexillology into a place where people discuss how to create flags correctly, it has become just that. And to see that, look no further than r/vexillology on Reddit. This is a place where on the surface, the 5 principles of flags often are taken for granted as the only way to make an acceptable flag, where Good Flag, Bad Flag is one of the few resources aspiring flag makers are given. With that said, I hope you can see why I do not love CGP Grey's portrayal of the flag guideline. For instance, despite how iconic the Californian flag is, and despite how the flag is pretty popular among Californians, it fails just because it has text on it.
I know you think your flag is awesome, but you seem to have scrawled California across it. And about your bear, look at him. Really look, California. That's a scared bear. This is A tier, but F tier.
Throughout the video, he mentions how some flags, like Indiana and Wyoming, would be so much better if they just ditched either the text on their flag or the seal on their flag. Even a flag like Colorado's, which I would say makes its lettering so subtle that it basically becomes a symbol, does worse on CGP Grey's flag grading scale because of the C. This is a side tangent. But this now deleted tweet by CGP Grey feels a bit too much like a blind acceptance of these flag principles rather than recognizing a seemingly flawed flag can be loved by many. I mean, California's flag is commonly put on merchandise, it's recognizable, and Californians in general seem to like their state flag. And personally, with no offense to the redditor who made the flag, I do not think this flag design is nearly as good as the bear flag. Anyways, the most unnerving part of the video, at least to me, is how the flag grades are portrayed more as an objective list rather than an opinion. There is little reason why a flag like Maryland is better than a flag like Ohio. The reason CGP Grey ranks it higher is because of his own history of loving how ugly the flag is.
And what I absolutely love is their number one example of a flag that is hideous but still works is,
Let me guess.
can you guess it?
Is it Maryland?
It is Maryland!
Yeah.
I laughed so hard when I saw that.
I mean, personally, I love the Maryland flag as well, as do many people from Maryland.
I love the Maryland flag.
But it isn't objectively good. Because what does that even mean? What the flag actually succeeds in is being enjoyed by the people it represents.
They perfectly acknowledge that these are guidelines, that you can still have good flags that break these rules.
So what do I believe is the criteria for a state flag being unsuccessful? Well, it's not how pretty it is, it's not how simple it is, and it's not what Redditors think. Rather, as I have said many times up to this point, it is about what the flag represents to the people. Let's take a look at a flag that almost definitely fails at representing its population, or at least seems to. Let's look at my home state, New York. The New York state flag is a clear instance of a seal on a bedsheet, with the New York state seal being placed over a blue background. But let's look back at the history of the flag. During the late 1700s, the United States was a bit busy having a Revolutionary War, and an important part about being independent was designing a state seal. Seals were especially important at the time because they were used to confirm that documents were officially issued by the government. The state seal would be modified slightly over the centuries leading up to this 1896 version of the state seal. In that same year, New York State would adopt its first ever state flag, which included the state seal placed over a buff background. Looks a bit familiar, New Jersey. Why was it New Jersey piss yellow and not blue? Well, it's because buff was the color of the Revolutionary Army in New York and New Jersey. Well, that kind of explains it. However, it was not just all said and done after that. You see, since flags are supposed to represent people, the opinion of New Yorkers did matter, and New Yorkers did not love the flag color because it was much more common for military flags at the time to have the state seal over a blue background. Therefore, the state legislature changed the color of the background to blue in 1901. This flag would not change for over a century, until disgraced former governor of New York,
I am gay.
Until disgraced former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, had the state seal changed in 2020 to add the line, E pluribus unum, which also changed the flag of New York by transitivity. Today, the New York state flag is mostly just a set piece for official governmental events. I do not think I have ever seen a single person in this whole state flying a New York state flag by itself. So, from what I can see, this state flag does fail at resonating with the people of the state, though maybe it's a cultural thing. You suck! But when a flag does not resonate with its people, that does not necessitate simplicity. Rather, it necessitates changes that make it more relevant to the people today. That can be reflected with more tangible symbols to the people of today. State seals are just not as relevant to people today since they do not have much of a direct connection to our lives. But some state symbols could take that place. For instance, look at Mississippi's new flag. It is not necessarily simple. The flower in the center is not simplified that much, and there is even text on the flag, but it doesn't have to be simple. The people of Mississippi chose the flag, basically saying, this flag represents us. Will any flag perfectly represent everyone it applies to? Probably not. But crafting a good state flag is about the meaningfulness first, and then making sure it's recognizable. However, the flag should be representative of the people in some way. One of the best ways to do this is by having a flag referendum. This can be seen in the 2020 Mississippi flag referendum. The state legislature did not just decide what the new flag of Mississippi would be, but rather there was a referendum that determined whether or not the new flag would be selected. While there was not much choice when choosing a new flag, there was at least a referendum which decided if the new flag would be selected or not. This cannot be said for Minnesota's flag redesign, which was selected by a committee without much say from the people of Minnesota. The committee would attract a lot of controversy for modifying many of the flag finalists at the very last possible second to create entirely new flags. The whole process felt rushed, and despite how the committee seemed to randomly make new flags, the final flag was chosen on the same day. While I will say that the selected flag looks alright, I cannot say for sure whether or not it will work as the flag of Minnesota because the people of Minnesota never got a chance to vote on it. So no matter how pretty your flag is, the people of the flag it is representing should have a say in its adoption. Vexillology is not the study of how to make a good flag using a recipe, but rather it is the study of why flags are loved by the people it represents. The 5 principles of flag making by Kay are not set in stone rules, but rather they create a model by which one can try to make a recognizable flag. But like any model, it isn't always right. It can only be used to an extent. It is not a checklist a good flag must satisfy, it is a list of attributes which many popular flags have. So, if you're watching another state change their flag, do not think in terms of simplicity, but in terms of representation. Perhaps the old flag and all of its weirdness has more charm and appreciation than what a flag expert may say is objectively better. And with that said, goodbye.